Let's look at a very, very interesting stock. So first off, read this disclaimer carefully. Then do your good deed of the day by liking and subscribing. So here is the company's website, Aris Water Solutions for water, natural gas, and crude oil. So yeah, let's just jump into the data. So we start here with the chart, a long-term picture with the weekly data points. So what we can see here is that this stock is obviously fallen from its highs. So looking at the weekly data points here, it doesn't look very appealing. It looks a bit wild, but when you zoom in a bit, you do see here that this week and this week, the wick went way further down but closed higher. So that's some interesting behavior suggesting that maybe some of the pessimism is receding. When we then start drawing here, we see that we have a rounding. Let's even go broader. A big rounding bottom. That is a technically very bullish pattern. It's a pattern that evolves over time, and it's this dynamic where the bears obviously dominated here, but now the bulls are gaining strength. The key issue still for the bulls is this moving average here. The purple 20-day moving average. It is used by a lot of different technical indicators. It still is a resistance level. But I do think the behavior from the bulls is interesting. We are very oversold here on the weeklies. Not an appealing short on the dailies. We are still low. And we are emerging from an extreme oversold level. Accumulation distribution is corroborating what we see here in the chart itself. So there are buyers here supporting this pattern. So all in all, this is interesting. So let's write some notes here. We do have a rounding bottom. That's what we have. I think I will give... okay, so I will give the bulls a 6. I would have given the bulls a much higher score if the pattern was a bit different. The issue with the rounding bottom is that to trade the rounding bottom, you have to accept a bit of a wider stop. So as such, the rounding bottom trades are usually your more longer term trades. It's not as clean as using like the 200-day moving average as like a buy level and also a stop loss level. Yeah, so it's a bit murky, but rounding bottoms, they can be really, really fun to be a part of when they work. The issue with rounding bottoms is where do you put your stop? If we were to look at this chart here, the ultimate failure of this rounding bottom would be closing below here. That would be accepting a 6% loss. It's not a huge loss, but it's a bit of a wider stop. So let's look at the seasonality. We do not get any data here to the left, to the right. We have very little data, but the data we do have shows that April it's a better month than March. May was bullish last year. June was bearish. So we have very little to go on, unfortunately. So when we have this paucity of data, I wouldn't give much of a score here. So I think I will give a tiny point here to the bears, but not much at all, just a -1. Next, we look at the fundamentals. So looking here at the price book in blue over time and also price to sales, price earnings, we are really, really low. This is definitively value. A price to sales of 0.7, that is a very low score. So yes, there's definitively value here. Looking at analyst forecasts, and there are 10 analysts with a 1-year price target. They are all bullish. Average is 86% above us. They are very bullish. This is a very oversold stock on the technicals, but also here on the fundamentals. So yes, there's value here. The yield here is 4.6%. So you do get a pretty decent yield as well. But yeah, talking about fundamentals, it's an 8 here from me. This is just really good. And so trading fundamentals alone, it's dangerous because you can get into value traps, but we do have corroborating data here from the technicals. So yeah, this is interesting. Let's look at relative performance. Because we have very little data, we do not get any relative performance, well, statistical correlations here on the weeklies. When we go here to the dailies, then we do finally get some data. There is minus 13% correlation with S&P 500, 35% with XLU, which is the utilities ETF. And then you have 1% correlation here with the water ETF. So I expected higher from water, but it seems like XLU has the biggest effect, but it's a limited effect, though, on Aris. But here is XLU. Interesting move from the bulls, but they have gotten themselves into a problem territory with the green 50-week moving average. Let's look here at the dailies as well. Yeah, the 200-day is also a battle level for the bulls. Not ideal. Seasonality usually gets some weakness into later April, but then strength certainly throughout May. But the correlation here was so weak that we shouldn't really make a big deal out of the link here of the relationship between Aris and XLU. But let's just have a bit of a look at the chart. So now we are comparing them against each other. Aris has massively underperformed XLU. That is to be expected. We see here on the daily data points something that is developing into a potential rounding bottom. It is not as bullish of a rounding bottom as we see in the chart on Aris, but there's something here. The seasonality, April, not a really bullish month for Aris, but not really bearish either. May, you do see that last year, Aris substantially outperformed the XLU. So let's give a bit of a score here on relative performance. What I don't like is that there was a positive correlation with XLU, but it was not strong enough really to jump to conclusions. But what we did see was interesting. But given that we didn't get a lot of intel here, I will give 3 points to the bulls. Overall, we do end up with 4 in favor of the bulls. I do think that there's something rather interesting happening with Aris at this point. So yeah, it is more of a buy than a sell. But it belongs more in a longer term portfolio, given that the rounding bottom, it's more challenging when it comes to putting on like a clear stop level. Okay, so we do have some time left. Let's look at various charts of interest. Here is the S&P 500. We do see here that there's been some decent rally here into April. We are approaching the blue 100-week moving average. It's not, well, it is a resistance level, but it hasn't been, we haven't closed at it yet. You see here that in late January, we went up there, but the wick went up there. We didn't close at it. Looking at the daily data points, we do have a pretty decent rally here. I don't think we are overbought. No, we are elevated though on RSI. We are on the upper end of the range, but we're not like at a level where you should panic. But it's not a level either where it makes a lot of sense to like add to an existing bullish position. Could be some weakness here to the left here, looking into 20th-ish of April. You do see that April, though, it is a very green month. May is also pretty decent for the S&P. June is weaker, but yeah, it's a pretty good seasonality here for the SPY. But it seems like, quite a few investors have bought into that seasonality already. So the easy gains have been made, but there's reason to expect a bit more, but I prefer easy gains, both for bullish and bearish trades. To get in like later into the game, it's more risky, right? Let's look at Bitcoin slash US dollar. Yeah, let's go to Coinbase. Yeah, so Bitcoin, it did do a bit of a relax here over 3 weeks, taking a bit of a break, but now it's running again. Let's look a bit here at RSI. Looking at weekly RSI, we aren't yet at any kind of like, well, so it could be a pullback level given what happened in November of 2021 and also August of 2020. But we have seen, clearly a bigger, more enthusiastic rallies here from Bitcoin. But yeah, so you have two scenarios here. We could have something like we've seen in late 2020, but there's also been instances where this RSI level is actually bearish and rather shortable. Let's go here to the daily data points when it loads. Here again on RSI, especially, we are high. But there's been times where we have been higher. Looking at the seasonality, it does actually support a bit of a bearish take. You see that, especially from late April into later May, that's a weak period for Bitcoin. Looking at April, current month, 6% so far, and April is a decent month for Bitcoin. May is weaker. At least recently, there's been some pretty red months for May and also June, especially, well, not that bad for June, but you see that because the losses here for May have been bigger than what we see in June, but June has a tendency to close in the red. Okay. Okay, what other things should we look at? Well, we did talk about water, which is a commodity, so let's look at some other commodities. Yeah, so let's look at natural gas. NG, yeah, the NYMEX. So, natural gas. Okay, so this is bear in mind that this is a commodity. This is not like one stock in the natural gas business. This is the commodity itself. It is extremely tempting to just load up on a chart like this. It's extremely low. The odds are very favorable of a nice rally. If we play around with percentages, 180 just to go up here 370. I am heavily considering adding to my nat gas position. It's a longer term position, but this is just too low. This is not a stock. This isn't like we have well, there's thousands of natural gas stocks, so some can go bankrupt. No, natural gas futures will not go and file for bankruptcy. It will not become free. Okay, it just will not. There's geopolitical reasons why this is very low, but I do think that it's a simplistic geopolitical calculation because there's a lot of factors when it comes to the economy of the bear. So there's been this obsession now about, well, if the nat gas price is really low, then that's the road to victory. I do think that's very simplistic, and at this point, this is just way too tempting. I mean, we have a double bottom here as well. Let me just draw that in. Here, I mean, just look at this double bottom, and this is just, this is really tantalizing. So yeah, I do have a nat gas position. Let's look at the seasonality. Not that good though. There is some weakness here, but the thing is that nat gas has been so weak though for quite some time that it's very due some strength. Looking at April here, you do see that it's the #1 month for nat gas. May is definitively weaker, and also June, but April is a very bullish month. So yeah, nat gas, very, very interesting for April, especially at these levels, obscenely low levels. So we have looked at a bunch of stuff now. A bunch of stuff. So yeah, go to diamondarm.com to get more information. I'm working on various courses. I've been a bit distracted recently due to the whole AI trend. So I'm doing a big deep dive into AI, learning a lot about it, becoming really good at talking with the GPT. So that there's a lot of interesting stuff happening there that I will also introduce to this channel pretty soon.